jury, and tomorrow is the wrap-up, so to say. So we've been able to bring it down from 385 projects to a number that I cannot reveal. Tonight we have Max Rink speaking about the making of the Archiprix exhibition. How do you make an exhibition of 2,300 panels? That is different than the exhibition that we normally have at the end of the semester. That is different than the exhibitions that we put up in the semester. Max has done 3 exhibitions and he will share that with us. Second on stage is our professor of the Faculty of Architecture, Jigna Desai, and our teaching fellow from Madrid, Inigo Cornago. They will share with you the ideas of the workshops. 10 workshops will take place between 1 and 9 February in 2017. And they will share with you the backgrounds of the ideas, how this is organized. And the third one this evening is an upcoming winter school. There are 3 people who are doing that. You can see the 3 pictures of Kirit, Vicky and Radhika. And the wise old man has decided that the young rookies should present. So you will see on stage Vicky and Radhika, but Kirit is very much here. I'd like to call to the stage Naksha, who will take the lead in introducing the first speaker. Thank you very much.
Max Rink is a practicing architect based in the Netherlands. With his office, Spring, he has been involved in the production of architecture, interior and exhibition projects with a strong focus of sustainable design. Formerly, he has also worked amongst others for OMA and has received the Archiprix International Award in 2007. Let's welcome Max Rink for the presentation.
A bit to fill it with the program, so they were happy to have us. Big spaces, quite beautiful in a bit of a strange building. And so we got all the basically ground floor levels to use, and actually we also needed all of them because it's such an amount. We tried out different setups of how we could fit it in, and ended up actually with a fairly simple system of timber frames, which would be hung up in between 2 side frames and then elevated a bit. And in between we would just fill it with all the panels. And this might look kind of rigid as a structure at first, but in the end, by keeping these in-between lines open, I think the result was convincing to us, as it was airy. You know, you could have side relationships with people looking at it on the other side, and it didn't fill or clog the space because there's many lines you could see through. The little things, the leaves you see hanging out are the passports for the authors, and this became the final setup. If you look at it like this, it looks kind of boring, I would say. But in space, once you walk through, it's it stayed open and it worked quite well. Here you see separators. There you see some models. And these were the results of the workshops were displayed on screens back then. And that time we had to get 10,000 needles to stick all these panels, and we had all these needles, and there was even a concept to organize the colors by country, but then sticking it in the needles quality was so bad that actually you would hurt your fingers, so we had to find a solution and bought a lot of needles from a different brand later. just a little sidestep. With the Archiprix, we also present or basically get invited to trade fairs, as they are always interested in having, also cultural program. They give us their space for free. We go there with the Archiprix. We get exposure. This was one exhibition we did in Germany, at a big trade fair. And yeah, just to show presence also there, it works well. Another little sidestep. As an office, this is out of the Archiprix, but just I wanted to show the project as an approach, what I think is interesting in exhibition design. So we were asked by a German architecture magazine that is also present at these trade fairs. Can you design us a stand and make it quick? And what happens at these fairs is actually that they build it up. There's quite a budget normally, because everything needs to be looking decently, and then afterward everything gets thrown into the trash. And of course we wouldn't agree to that strategy, so we designed a system for them that is just made up of like a system you could reuse. And the main idea was actually to use simple material, like the most standard wood beams you could get, and then think of that actually the exhibition would just be an intermediate project, that after the exhibition is done, we would use that wood to build a church somewhere or something that actually, gives more value to the wood. They liked the concept, but they didn't want the end product. So we still went through with them, and actually it turned out that it was a simple system, just wood beams and then held together by tensioning cables. So no screws, no further connections, just holding it all together. So the assembly would be pretty quick, and also the disassembly. We designed tables and columns and so forth. And this was how it looked like together. So you see these strings are just pressing the wood on top of each other. And it turned out they were so happy with this design, which they thought they would trash it afterwards. They thought, maybe we can just keep it again. And then the next exhibition, they called us again, hey, can you make another plan? And for us, it was also interesting as a young designer, you have to think also, how do you, generate your income? And actually they had to ask us each time again, because they never had the exact plans we made. So we always just gave them pixelated plans, not vector PDFs. So they could never redo it. So every time they called us again, and in the end they ended up doing 10 different shows, even buying more wood. And for us it became like a constant involvement. So that was nice. And still, it has to be resolved with the wood has to be done, because it still exists. It's just not decided what will be done. But actually the whole value of the exhibition is still stored somewhere. So it was all of these exhibitions were just temporary, setting up of the material. Yeah, so here you see some different, and we designed different kinds of bigger furnitures also. And such an approach would be also nice for when we come with the Archiprix here. The design is just starting, so we don't have anything to show yet, but it will come. And then our journey went on to come to India, and we developed the new, whoops, that went too fast, sorry. The new graphic design, and the end product looks a little bit like this. You've seen it, I guess, somewhere. It's on the posters everywhere. But we're excited. The new design will happen in the new library, and I cannot reveal anything about it yet. But we're happy to see you there once it opens. Thank you.
Thank you, Max. That was really amazing to see exhibitions held at such scale. And I'm really glad that we have Archiprix happening at CEPT. By the way, the exhibition at CEPT is going to be longer than 1 kilometer. So I hope everything works out well. But most importantly, it's great to see that exhibitions are not just display of images or drawings. It's more about planning, arrangement, the way the panels are created, the way you create movement and spaces where everything that you see is worth. So thank you very much. And I would like to invite Dharal to come and introduce the next speakers to us.
Hello, good evening everyone. The workshops during Archiprix Ahmedabad 2017 February are being curated by Jigna Desai and Inigo Cornago. Now, they will share with us the ideas for the workshop. Here is a brief introduction about both the curators. Jigna Desai is an assistant professor and area chair for conservation in Faculty of Architecture. Associate. She leads the architectural and urban conservation specialization in the postgraduate program at the faculty. She is doing her PhD on the sustainability of urban heritage with a minor on sustainability of craft habitats in the Kutch region of Western India. She presently also serves as a resource person to organizations such as Khamir and CEE and is the coordinator for the UNESCO Chair for Education for Sustainable Development and Human Habitat, which has been constituted at CEPT in collaboration with CEE. Inigo Cornago from Spain holds a Master in Architecture by Escuela Técnica Superior de Arquitectura de Madrid and completed part of his study in Stockholm. Inigo has coordinated and co-directed Archiprix International 2015, workshop held in Atsam, Madrid, in which 120 young practitioners from all over the world worked together under the theme Towards a Middle Out Urbanism. Currently, he has been selected for the teaching fellowship in CEPT University and will be teaching in the Faculty of Architecture in 2016. Let's welcome them with a round of applause. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for your kind introduction. So we will briefly present the workshops that Jigna and me are curating. So as you can see, the title of the same is going to be Making Habitat, Mega City Micro-Narratives. We will further develop this concept, but first we want to introduce you about some numbers and some structure of how this workshop is going to be organized. So it will take place from the 1st to the 10th of February 2017 in CEPT University. There will be one global brief that we will introduce and develop later on. There will be two curators, Jigna and myself. There will be 10 workshops, let's say like inside this global brief, that they will be led by 10 practitioners based in India, that they will be selected by us through a call by invitation process. For 470, somehow like that, people is invited to come. That they are the authors of the 350 projects that have been that are competing these days in the Archiprix Award, and around 120 participants will come from this large number of people. And within Ahmedabad city that will be hosting these workshops, there will be 10 sites, not only thought of as location and as physical locations, but also thought of conceptual locations or other kind of notion of site that we will develop later on. But before, we want to make a quick overview of what the workshops of Archiprix had been in the past. So this is the 9th Archiprix International workshop in the history of Archiprix International. You can see the poster there, and you can check the content and the result of these workshops on the internet. I strongly encourage you to do that. And I will quite briefly, go over the Madrid Archiprix workshop. As our colleague said, I was also co-curating or co-directing or whatever you want to call the work I do. Yes, that last edition that took place 1.5 years ago, it had the theme towards an middle out urbanism. In that case, in Madrid, it's always the challenge of the global brief to relate to the local challenges of architectural practices in the city or the country, but at the same time be able to connect and relate to all the different sensibilities and let's say challenges that new architects are dealing when they conclude their education and they jump into professional practice. That is the kind of people that is taking part in these workshops, and that's also one of the reasons that this workshop and also the one that we are talking now, it's dealing with the role of the architect and how he can address relevant issues in society. So here you can see just a mid-review of that workshop held in Madrid. But there also we were trying that the participants have the opportunity to engage with sites, and that it is not about just being locked in a room working in your computer. This is something that we are also fostering in this occasion. This is one of the results of that workshop. Was done by one of the groups that is called the Welcome Hotel, and that was dealing with the problem of eviction in Madrid, the problem of people being kicked out of their house in the neoliberal capitalistic system in which the housing issue is located nowadays. But just to give you an idea of the relevance and somehow the quality of the results that can get out of these workshops, this work is currently being exhibited in the Triennial Architecture exhibition in Oslo, in Norway. So, and it was partly developed in these workshops. This is also another result of the workshop. In this case, it was called Analog Smart Cities. And it is completely opposite in the sense that it is dealing with how, like, performing in the city and performing direct intervention. So all these two ranges of intervention, such as this theoretical approach to the problem of social problem of eviction, and this that had to do more on how can we transform the use of public space through cheap and direct intervention in the city, can take place. So just it was just to illustrate briefly what these workshops are about and what kind of results can get done in them. Now we will take you through the global brief that we have developed for this edition in Ahmedabad, also with the feedback of many of our colleagues. And so we also take this chance to thank you, all of you that have been supportive this month or month and a half that we've been working in this.
Oh, still on, wait. We are not done yet. What I'll do is that I'll just read through the global brief that we have developed. For this, once again, is just, as Anya put it in the beginning, just to sort of share it with all of you, and also the kind of steps that we are planning to take from here. So the reason why we chose to read it out is because we've very carefully chosen the words that we have, and we don't want to miss out, and we don't want to misrepresent anything that we've identified in this. Archiprix International Workshop 2017, hosted by CEPT University in Ahmedabad, invites a selection of the best recently graduated architects, urban designers, and landscape architects worldwide to address the paradoxes of making a habitat in this city of opportunities and contradictions. Through design proposals and critical reflections placed in relevant locations and controversial arenas along a cross-section of Ahmedabad, participants and workshop leaders are challenged to explore the potential and manifest the value of the role designers can play in the current global urbanization process. Historian Howard Spodek portrayed Ahmedabad as the shock city of the 20th century India, as it was the center of all the problems. And it provoked sharply different reactions from visitors and from its inhabitants. New direction of an urban future have been tried out in Ahmedabad with disjointed and patchy reactions during and after the 20th century, when it has experienced infrastructural, environmental, and governmental challenges due to rapid urban transformations. It can be looked at as a city of paradoxes. Ahmedabad was one of the first cities in India to be industrialized in the mid-19th century, and its main textile labor union became the model for the rest of the country. However, with the following liberalization of economy and diversification of industry in the late 20th century, it also led the way of downgrading labor and deserting obsolete industrial infrastructure within its boundary. The city established one of the first municipalities in India that served as a national reference in service provision to the working classes, and yet it has recently worked as a laboratory of public-private urban development with unclear distribution of capital gains and resulted in multiple urban displacements. Gandhi-led non-violent movement against untouchability was launched in the city, and yet Ahmedabad has also witnessed riots of communal nature. Also under Gandhi's guidance, Ahmedabad became the headquarters of the freedom movement and fought against colonialism, and immediately after independence it became the pioneer in the westernization of education and culture. Accordingly, Ahmedabad embraced modern architecture, and it is unique for having 4 of its masters invited to build inside its limits. At the same time, it is also the first city from India to have been nominated, its historic area as the UNESCO World Heritage City. Today, Ahmedabad is pitched as a mega city with smart city strategies and is one of the fastest growing cities in the world. Yet again, it is on the front lines not only of India but globally, following its tradition as a shock city. It has become the testbed in which experimental projects, policies, and mega futures are being implemented with uneven results and disjunct responses. Its inhabitants are dealing with a conundrum in common with many other rapid growing urbanities worldwide, especially in the so-called global south. As in other Indian cities, in which the demographic, environmental, and economical pressures is shearing, there is a strong demand on making. Infrastructure, buildings, plans, and policies are being developed or updated at an increasingly fast pace. Its paradoxical outcomes range from building new gated communities to existing villages being engulfed, from aspirational aesthetics of the global world to the pastiche architecture in memory of the glorious past, from greater mobility and possibility of public places to the selective access of housing and public services. The first-hand experience through the cross-section of the city gives a unique picture of the varied and irregular responses that its inhabitants are giving to this context. The desire to create one's own habitat has resulted into countless personal, local, and partial stories of Ahmedabad that describe the everyday life of people living here. Our culture of inhabitation and customization permeates every corner of the city, bringing together the informal settlements and the brutalist concrete megastructures. It is reflected in the personalization of the suburban villas on one hand and the interiors of the auto rickshaw on the other. I think we'll go to the cross-section a little later. In fact, it is this understanding of urban built environment as a social practice that can humanize the overwhelming number of such a city and weave a guiding thread through it. The key questions the architects, urban designers, and landscape designers participating in the workshop will respond to is how to bridge the gap between the grand strategies of geopolitics and little tactics of the habitat. Can its tool be useful in the context of productive uncertainty? Is it possible to both promote an open, empowered inhabitation of the built environment while securing an even redistribution of the surplus value among the diverging stakeholders involved in the development dynamics? What approach can integrate various scales and accommodate diverse, unforeseen scenarios, providing specific answers to all of them? Can we make habitat in between megacities and micro-narratives? We have in the context of this global brief, we are in the process of inviting specific workshops, those 10 workshops, and 10 workshop leaders. We're in the process of doing that at the moment, and we are going to be soon sending out the call for the workshop leaders. And the call for the workshop leaders, will be what we've written to, or what we're planning to write to them is that in the context of above, we invite the workshop leaders to propose an exercise and lead one of these groups of international participants into engaging with one part of the city's cross-section. This exercise could be resulting into a conceptual design proposal, or can in any other way reflect upon the role of designers in the global process. I think we've also, I think Inigo will take you through the cross-section that we've traveled of the city and picked. Yes. That gives the kind of the variety of.
Yes. I think also just to make justice to the research team that has put this section together with us, just to show their names there. They are students of this school, and we are happy to be working together in this. Thank you, Jigna. So I think in the following week the global brief will be uploaded online. So I think you could take a deep read in it if you are willing to. Now what we are going to do is to guide you through the cross-section that we were speaking before. We have, our intention is to cut Ahmedabad in two, showing all these paradoxes and contradictions that we are describing in the text. That text is also working as a presentation of the city towards these visitors that are coming for the workshop, and framing them in a particular way of addressing the issues. So I will take you through this real section, but a little bit compressed, of the city, from the farmlands in the western part of the city until the east. So you can see, okay, I have to do it like this. You can see how there is a certain urban landscape that now it's coming into this aspirational development of Sobo, in which a certain kind of aesthetic and housing is being played. Then we will come to SP Road, this ring road, in which we are highlighting how sometimes public investment is fostering private revenue. Then we will come to Ambly Village, that is somehow will be engulfed by this development. We will come to SG Road and the towers and the aesthetics that are being displayed there. We can also see this Satyagraha Society, the most expensive piece of land in Ahmedabad, where certain kind of wealthy people has created this piece of gated community for themselves. We will then come to Satellite Road, this commercial development and the kind of commercial typology that has been created there, and also the paradoxes of this high FSI in the borders of the street that that contains the BRTS line, that contrast with what's happening just behind that FSI line. We will then come to the leak housing by Doshi, in which he experimented with incrementality and certain kind of humanization of modern architecture. There will be also public plots. There will be other kind of gated communities, these kind of home ground neighborhoods as Hollywood, CG Road, and other previous experimentation on high developed commercial road, Law Garden, public space in the city, the informal markets, the formalization of those activities, also the paradoxes of education and this education-driven development. We will touch the Gandhi heritage, let's say, and deal with the issues of paradoxes between nationalism, non-violence, inclusiveness, inclusiveness, caste politics, etc. We will also be dealing with certain governance, with the role of the town hall and what is playing there. We will, of course, address the paradoxes on the new development in the riverfront, the kind of opportunities that this new linear public space has created in a metropolitan area, and at the same time the population and ecological displacement that it has taken also. We will address several issues like Sunday market, also formalization of informal. We will take a look at the symbols in the old city, the kind of traditional living and how this way of life is completely being transformed, the kind of aesthetics that are in play in the within the heritage aesthetics, this kind of ruin porn that we were describing, how these dynamics are actually displacing the way of life they are supposed to protect. We are also going to look at the mills and how those abandoned infrastructures are being taken over for a certain kind of population. We will be looking at the contradictions of the displacement that happened in relationship to these riots. That has also pretty much to do with the segregation in dwelling that we were looking at before. The new models of industrial parks that are coming. This is I like this one very much. The Chota Kankaria, it is representing the aspirational and the opportunities of a multi-center development, and how different parts of society aspire to being new centers with a certain quality. And then to close the circle, we will come to SP Road again, the ring road that we saw before. It's coming here. And also paradoxically, this Gujarat Housing Board has different typologies on how to address the issues of housing here. And we eventually come again to the rural, certain kind of a rural landscape that is sprawling around. So this is more or less the kind of site that we are setting for these workshops to take place, and we are proposing this section as a global site in which the workshops can be located, not only physically, but also the kind of issues and the kind of perspectives we want to bring into the picture, and what is the role of architects, urban designers, and landscape designers in relationship to these topics. I don't know if it was too much, or I just lost myself into this amazing landscape of contradictions. I apologize in advance.
Thank you, Jigna and Inigo. It suddenly seems like all scales are expanding, like a big city, long exhibition, elaborate workshops. But I really liked what Inigo emphasized on, that not having workshops in closed walls or classrooms, but actually taking students out, making them travel, which makes them realize where they are sited. So it's not like, it's very much contextual based rather than being aloof of everything. Thank you very much for taking this initiative of conducting this workshop. I would now request Keshav to come and introduce the next presenters to us.
This December, we have a winter school for rethinking on the models of the selected entries of the Archiprix by Kirit Patel, Vicky Achnani, and Radhika Min. Kirit Patel is an associate professor at the Faculty of Design and an advisor at DICRC at CEPT University. He received special training in nature knowledge and lightweight sculptures from the well-known German architect Frey Otto. He has conducted international exhibitions such as the Festival of India, USA, 1984, and the Golden Eye exhibition at the Cooper Hewitt Museum. Vicky Achnani is an architect by profession with a bachelor's in architecture at CEPT. He looks at architecture as a composition comprising a set of details and assemblage of parts that come together. Radhika Amin did her undergraduate in architecture from CEPT and masters from Architectural Association, Emergent Technologies and Design. She is currently involved in understanding the interrelationship between materiality, form, space, and performance.
Good evening, everyone. Hello. So the projects are a rich culmination of rich ideas coming from different cultures and school of thoughts. Now let's imagine that it's a blue moon kind of a situation. The Archiprix is here, the projects are here, the best all around the world. So should we just have a look at it? Or should we try and dig deeper for a while to actually go through a process of starting to seeing it crucially and later on reflecting with a strong medium? Here what we call it as models. Why models? Why projects? Why participants? Rethinking models. The presentation is intended to generate an entry. Through the formulation of workshops with KP sir, we have constantly been trying to ask ourselves questions about the process, about the methodology, how can we formulate the exercises. And the presentation here is a glimpse of the things that are coming together in our minds. We have also tried to look at the earlier nominee examples to correlate exercises with the intentions. The representational instances here are attempt to trigger imagination. The workshop is a discourse of inventive model making. With the nominated projects at the starting point, let's bank upon the opportunity to explore the contemporary issues dealing with different scales and complexities of architecture, urban design, and landscape. Why models? Nick Dunn in his essay Model Behavior says, the information contained within a model is dense, since the model provides the possibility to perceive the design as a whole by presenting relation between the parts and different properties like size, form, material, color, textures, all at once without any verbal aid. At the same time, models make reality is comprehensible, operational, workable, and enable a reality to be interpreted and represented by selectively reducing the complexity and focusing on the specific aspects by altering the scales, adding colors, depth, and so on. Why students? Of course, because translating is not a separate science, but it does represent specialized skills and also requires an aesthetic sensitivity, a capacity of sensing the closest natural and intuitive equivalent. Here it's a positive dialogue between the designer and the participant, in bracket the translator. It is a process where the participant will gain an insight about the project, the concerns while revealing how a nominee has designed, what kind of knowledge they have employed, and how they approach a problem, the thinking involved, and a total response. Yeah.
So we said, rather than asking models of what, let us ask models for what. Of course, it is to translate, articulate, and interpret the key ideas. Of course, it is a conscious crafting of models such that an architectural debate can be generated. But most importantly, it is to look for or carry out a directed search for the unknown in terms of developing skill, knowledge, or a sense of thinking, something which, an ability for which might be inherently present but needs to be sharpened. All in all, it's a self-contained communication tool, testing the design issue, allowing new questions to be raised, alternative solutions to be explored, and hypotheses to be formulated. Let's talk a bit about the process. On one hand, we have the project information, which is known. On the other hand, it's the final outcome, which is unknown. Imagine, with the information as raw material, we want to take a leap into something which is unknown. How do we go about it? How do we read the projects and filter the information? In order to do so, we need some sort of a process such that it becomes our tool, our pole to take that jump. So let's build up this pole. When we see a design project, there are layers of information layers of understanding that is involved. Let's compare it to a crime scene investigation, a murder. First set of observations are the immediate learnings of what is present on the site, who was murdered, what was the tool. The next set of information is the hidden information, the suspects, something which is not physically present yet traceable and very crucial. And finally, recreating the scene, piecing and questioning the information available to solve the mystery. In our case, the theories help us understand our work at each stage and also give us a direction. So looking quickly at these three stages. The first one, the immediate understanding. This is where we are extracting the information. Tapping into the character of a project, representing what we see. These initial models are like drawdowns. A drawdown means a drawing plus a model. It is a working tool that can describe the conceptual forces that shape the work and the processes it undergoes. It intensifies irregularities, fluctuations, and instability. Let's look at two projects from previous Archiprix exhibitions. So the image on the left. For a moment, if we do a quick exercise, a one-day exercise, and say that from a primitive, a cube, can we define the organizational character? How would one make a cube if we wanted to reach to that stage in the image? The one on the right is a portable dwelling system. Can we make an object or a tool that is specific to this project? A tool such that if we gave it to the guys who are constructing it on site, it would help them in the system and assembly of this thing. Think about it. Next, we go to the hidden quality. That is where we start abstracting. Looking beyond the obvious, and we start thinking through model making. Referring again to Nick Dunn, abstraction means removal of extraneous information, hereby removing any unnecessary components of detail, of design under exploration on being communicated. The more abstract a model is, the more it communicates the conceptual ideas, facilitates the designer's imagination to flow, and numerous interpretations of design. So what are the methods? Removing redundant elements to reach an absolute essence. Spatial grammar, geometry, proportion, light, the tectonics. Activating dormant character. Define the forces acting in the design as are apparently dormant forces still a part of the design? Can they be activated? Performing operations, permutations, module repetitions, variations, part and whole. This is the stage when we now start translating while model making. So what are the limits for translation and how can we anticipate that in our process? We think that it is a design discourse and it can advance until an appropriate level of definition is reached. There are zones of clear identification and zones of transition, the in-between. What is constant is the linkage, the transition from one shape to another, and the Escher composition here through visual balance brings us close to where we had started from. So what will be this for our journey? How do we take a leap and come back gradually to where we started from?
So there are theories which we have been looking into, which can help us with the process of extraction, abstraction, translation. We discuss here a few in terms of their relevance for our process. Theory of Indian aesthetics and wabi-sabi. These help us understand what we read in a project and how we interpret while making a model. The next theory, 6 Thinking Hats by Edward de Bono, help us with a lateral thinking, which will be very useful during discussions and meetings. Nature's law of minimum inventory and maximum diversity. It's a system that achieves a wide variety of effects from a small variety of parts to the whole relation. Can the whole become more than the sum of its part? Of course, the techniques, materials and articulation. Fineness in making to bring close S to the field, and imagination at all levels of scale. Fineness breaks down the fabric of building into finer and finer parts. It can register small differences while maintaining the overall coherence. So the workshops will be a hands-on approach while engaging the students with the digital and physical fabrication of an assembly-based method and casting for a monolith model. The workshop explores CNC milling, laser cut, 3D printing, rapid prototyping. Models display. Unlike a drawing, a model can be viewed from all the sides. Banking upon this opportunity, the model becomes freestanding, that is physically separated and suspended in a space to increase the viewer's interactivity while attaining the varied transparency as mentioned by Kessler. The intent here is to devise a new physical framework for display, less obvious and perhaps more interesting, creating an ideological scaffolding altogether. The separation of the models from the base and from the architecture of the space, giving it back to the nature, will allow a departure from a conventional practice. So what if the models, rather than being on the desk with their base, are hanging in the midair?
That's a word plan, a tentative one, which says the different stages and the time frame for each one of them. Coming back to where we had started from, is it important to rethink models? We suggest that the participants come with questions and use the workshop as a means to search for answers. In the broader context, the workshop should act as a seed, generating a possible dialogue between visiting participants, designers, as well as the students and practitioners who come and visit the exhibition. These are some of the questions which have already started opening up in our mind. Are these conceptual models? How can models become a tool to develop and express ideas? Can we see models as being dynamic rather than static? And the debate about dimensions and tools and tolerances and expressions. So, the plan for this workshop is to make models in a manner that the next Archiprix becomes incomprehensible without such models. We think we can say that, can we? Thank you.
Thank you.
KP sir, can I register for this workshop? It was really nice. The best part is, I think it's going to take making models to a very high level, because it's not just about making a model, but it's about working with young architects all over the world, exploring material under the best guidance. So those who have not registered for winter schools, they are closing soon, so please go and register. So I think we are done with the presentations. Anybody has any questions, any queries regarding any of the presentations or any general comments, please let us know. Wow, it was all clear. I would request Anna to please come and conclude.
Well, normally it takes a little bit of time to digest the questions. Can I ask all of you to come and sit here on the table and give our audience a little bit of time to think about questions? Well, it can happen. One round of applause. Thank you very much.